Hi everybody, it's Professor Diffley. So we are continuing in Module 3. This is lecture video 3 for Philosophy 201. So we were just talking about rule utilitarianism. This is saying we got to draw lines, right? Not every act is okay. In short, maybe killing innocent people is a step too far. Well, I will see in the criticisms later where this could go down a slippery slope sort of thing. So here's another view, and this really helps why Mill becomes more of a rule utilitarianism. He comes out with the harm principle, and you can see there is a video on this, a required video. Really take a look at that. And this is from his famous book on liberty. And you've probably heard of this before. The harm principle is the concept that as long as your actions don't physically harm somebody else, they should be legal. So this is, let's just jump into politics for a second. If we looked at politics, this would more be libertarian sort of view of the law. Libertarians argue that the only things we should really be against the law are things that hurt other people. Mill here is really talking about physical harm. So, and this is in the video, and it's in the image here, the caption. It says, your right to swing your arm leaves off where my right not to have my nose struck begins, right? So, I can do anything I want so long as it doesn't physically hurt you. It opens it up to all kinds of lifestyles. As long as they're not physically hurting you, things should be okay. That's really, it should be okay. That's the way Mills see this. So central concept for any rule or even a law should be that we have the freedom to do anything so long as it does not bring physical harm to another. And again, you can see the video on that. So that's Mills' view of things. Again, we should have rules. We should not harm others. That's really the way he views this. So now, jump forward to, and because there's not a lot of change in utilitarianism, until you get to a little bit more today with this non-hedonistic view. This is Peter Singer and his view of what he calls preference utilitarianism. So he says, and what do we mean by non-hedonistic? It's teleological, maximizing, impartial, all that, relativistic. But it does not claim that the greatest good for the greatest number could be reduced to pleasure or pain, right? In raw or higher forms. What he says is, a person believe that what improves a person's life is entirely determined by the satisfaction of their preferences. And that's what he means by you can't really figure out the greatest good for the greatest number just by this concept of pleasure or pain. Because what people like is up to their own preferences, right? And that's where, we shouldn't say some things are better than others, right? A lot of people say, oh, well, read a book, don't play a video game. If you've watched if you've ever played video games, you can see some of these incredible storytelling, incredible writing, acting. These have budgets of Hollywood films or more. They're better than Hollywood films. Some really deal with some really tough topics and choices and things like that. If that's how people get their entertainment, why is that not equal to me, say, reading a play or reading Shakespeare? What makes one better than the other, right? If my preference is to get I'm still hearing good writing, I'm still doing all that, shouldn't matter. I can't rank one thing over the other. People have taste, right? This is, and you see this in the beginning of the text on this, and this is one of my favorite things. They asked Duke Ellington, a 20th century jazz great, they asked him once, what is good music? And they thought he would know, right? He's the greatest musician of his time then. He'll tell you what good music is. He said, good music is whatever sounds good to you, right? It's about taste. If I like a certain band, I think Fish is the best band to go see live. I will never convince you. If you don't already believe that and you don't like them, I will never be able to convince you that they are. Does that make me right and you wrong? You like another band? No. It doesn't make either of us right or wrong. It means what I like is what I like, and what you like is what you like, and that's the way we work, right? Another view is, right? I say Brussels sprouts are delicious, and you hate Brussels sprouts. We never had Brussels sprouts. They're actually horrible. I hate them. They're bitter. They're like mini cabbages. They're only good with bacon, but that's besides the point. But if I like them and you don't, Who's right or wrong? Both of us are right. Why? Because you don't like them and I like them. That's just the way it works, right? It's taste. You can't, and that's what we mean by preference here. And so we must be at the core of moral thinking, right? What makes us happy. And that's the way of looking at it now, right? Instead of trying to say some things are better than others, we need to let people decide what makes them happy. All right, so moving on, let's get into just go through some of these critiques of utilitarianism here. This is really the overview. So no practical or timely, it's not practical or timely in weighing the consequences of one's actions. Why? Because we don't know the consequences until they happen. We can have a good idea of what's going to happen, but you don't actually know until it comes out. And again, intentions don't matter, right? You can have the best of intentions, but it turns out poorly. It still turned out poorly, right? And get what I mean there? It's also a lot of people say selfishness of humans are going to really block us from achieving the greatest happiness principle because most people are selfish. Again, the utilitarians thought maybe people were good and they're not selfish. I mean, that's up to you to decide. But you've met humans. What do you think of us? There's also the problem of relevant beings. We'll get into this in a bit. There's also the end of the justifying the means, right? So it could allow some really bad things. Like, look at this way. Here's one example. You could argue that the world would be better if you killed another group of people. And so you get rid of them, those remaining are happier. Is that moral? Well, if it leads to greater happiness, maybe it is. But then again, you just committed genocide. Moral? Is that ethical? A slippery slope is when, you start allowing, right, the ends justify the means. You're like, I'll bend the rules here. Once you make a little bit of a bend of the rules, next time you'll go a little bit further. You go a little bit further until you're falling down the slope, right? And you start off with good intentions, but you start bending the rules, you start doing things, and you just go further and further and further until you realize that you're off the rails sort of thing, slippery slope. Ethical conduct is, enforced by individual hope for favor, right? The reward of pleasure, not from, or from God. And so really, is that really the best way? So again, if I do things, well, let's put it this way. What it's saying is if you're doing things, and this is where motivations matter, where most other ethical theories say motivations matter. If I am doing things just to get into heaven, well, my motivation is not to do good things. It is to get into heaven, right? It's to get into what I think will make me get into heaven. I am not doing them because they are good things to do. I'm doing them because I want to get rewarded. Now, why is this a problem? Because if my only goal is a reward, then I'll do other things. If I am told and taught that by murdering a bunch of people, that will get me a reward, well then, if my goal is the reward, maybe I'll start killing people. Is that really what we're looking for? Right? So it's your motivations. If you're only looking for a reward for yourself, that's selfish. You're not really doing it for the right reasons. And that is what matters, right? You should do good things because they're good. That's really the idea. So again, problem relevant beings. We actually look at this later in the textbook. But it really is, are non-humans relevant to determining utility and ethics? Should we care about what happens to animals when we do things? We'll see this in the chapter on eating animals. Should we care? Do animals have feelings? Can they think? We know they can experience pain, but do we care? Let's look at it this way. Are some animals more worthy than others, right? You might eat a chicken, but how about your pet cat or dog? Why not? Both an animal. You named one, right? That's it. Is a dolphin more important than, an eel or something like that? Just because someone's got a cute face, does that, how do you determine which ones are worthy of consideration and others aren't, right? People argue that apes, and dolphins and whales should be, ranked higher than other animals. Why? What are the reasons? I'm not saying you should just, why? You have to determine these. We deal with this much more later, but that's also an issue here. To demanding this objection. This is other theory here. It's what this saying is. You're supposed to be looking for the greatest good for the greatest number, the greatest amount of happiness at all times. So everything you think about, you must determine what is the best option here. So say I want a donut. I really want a donut. I can go buy a donut. However, and that's going to make me happy. And so maybe I'm in a better mood that day. There's knock-on effects from that. But was that the best way? What if I use that money for the donut and I donated it to people in need? Well, wouldn't that create more happiness? Well, that means that I can never have a donut, because giving money and food to people that are starving is always going to create greater good than me eating a donut, right? Even though I love a donut, now I really want a donut because we're talking about this. But right, did you see why this is so utterly demanding on our behavior? It's almost like we can never make a moral enough choice. This is going to, and we could also think about what your life might be like if you have to think about everything, every possible, option out there. I want a can of soda. Well, what are other better options for me to do? And not only how are they going to affect me, but how are they going to affect the entire planet? It's a whole lot to think about. Really hard to really deal with. Other things here. Tyranny of the majority. This says that there's no absolute morality, right? So there's no natural rights. There's no inalienable rights. There's no human rights. We're looking for the greatest good. So it's going to say that not only should we do some awful things, not only are they required, are they permissible, but they're required. So what's some examples? Look at this. Example 1, total pleasure would be maximized if a resource of a small country forcibly taken from them by a larger country. What should you do? Well, we should overrun that country, steal everything them, because it's going to create more happiness in the larger country, who is the majority. So this would allow war for just, stealing purposes, which, probably has happened. No, not probably, has definitely happened, in the history of the world. But so that's one example. Here's example 2. Let's go a little bit further on this. You know what would be even better than just taking the resources from that other country? Let's kill all of them. Let's get rid of all of them. Now, that's definitely going to create more happiness, because we don't even going to count them anymore, because we just exterminated them. So, is that permissible? Seemingly, under utilitarianism, it's probably even required, right? If that's going to create more, it's more efficient and going to create more pleasure by creating genocide, do it. Now, is that really what we think about when we mean, something that's moral? That sounds kind of like Nazism, right? And the Holocaust, or any, other genocide out there. Here's another example from a U.S. Perspective. Imagine that total pleasure would be maximized if one group of people, a minority of people, were forced to work against their will and do labor and provide services for the majority. In other words, it would create more happiness for the majority of people if we enslave another group of people and make them do the work. It's better economically. It's better for us, because now we don't have to do the work, and we can focus on, let's say Group A. That's what I mean. Group A can now focus on art and all these other things, because Group B, who we've enslaved, is doing all the labor. That's slavery, right? Is that morally permissible? Most would argue no. But under utilitarianism, it creates greater happiness for the majority of people. Then sure, slavery is fine. Again, think about that, whether or not you'd be okay with that sort of idea. Again, the other problem here with preference utilitarianism, this is one where we're only looking at individuals, is, right, what matters to an individual is all that should really determine whether or not someone's good. Is what if my preference is to steal, to murder, to rape, to shoot heroin? Well, that's morally, right? Rape, murder, stealing, all that's permissible. Well, if that's what I believe is my preference, why shouldn't I be allowed to do that? If we're going to determine what's morally correct based on my preference. Again, this is the problem. Where do we draw the line? Who draws the line? How do we draw that line? These are issues that they've never really been able to fix and all of that. So that's utilitarianism, overview of that. I'm going to stop here. We're going to go into the next video, and I believe video 4, and we'll go through Kant real quick. All right, thank you, folks.